As a modern day gamer, no one could really blame you for subconsciously believing or even consciously believing that everything about this hobby that you love so much, this hobby or passion called gaming, that's probably been a part of your life for a few years, if not most of your life, would continuously get better as time progresses, technology improves, and humans collectively become more knowledgeable, skilled, and familiar with the development of video games. And while I wouldn't be so unfair to say that all modern games coming out nowadays are complete trash and all the older games are better in every way. No, I would never say that, but I will say a lot of the games coming out nowadays fail to meet even some of the lowest expectations many gamers have for them. This is not a situation where the expectations of most gamers are blown out of proportion all because of the hype for a video game that some random developer stepped on an E3 stage to promote. No. A lot of the time, it's not because of hype that leads to the disappointment in these modern video games. It's simply because a lot of these companies suffer from a lack of creative vision, and a lot of them just straight up have little to no integrity, a topic I'm going to touch on in a bit. But before we get there, I want to focus on creative vision and graphics. One thing that both gamers and developers share is that most of the time, we want our games to look the best they can possibly look, unless we want the game to have an unusual visual presentation or some sort of unique aesthetic. Like seriously, let's be real here. A lot of gamers want the latest AAA game to have the best graphics they've ever seen, and at the same time, developers want their product to look attractive and appealing so that it sells well and they make lots of money from it. You can take this the wrong way if you want to, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with wanting a game to look gorgeous. You see, the main issue for me is when all a game does is look gorgeous. Like, imagine the most beautiful woman to your eyes, yeah, or if you're a woman, the most handsome looking man, but they're boring in bed and they got zero personality and everything about them is undesirable to you. I mean, if you find that person attractive, you do you, but I'm not here to judge. But you get the point I'm making, and if you don't get the point I'm making, just click off this video. Anyways, if that person was magically transformed into a video game, all you would be left with is a graphical showcase like an Unreal Engine 5 demo that has no gameplay mechanics, no character to play as, and on top of that it has a $1,000 price tag. That's how I see some modern games, pleasing to the eye but overall completely undesirable to interact with. I myself only ever came close to being a sucker for graphics, but only for a brief moment in time during the PS4 era until I played Breath of the Wild and it reminded me once again that graphics aren't everything. But sadly, this ain't a Breath of the Wild video, so don't expect me to start praising that game for the rest of the video, and I don't think it's a masterpiece, and if you want to hate on me for having an opinion, you can go masterfully. Now let's continue, but I will say it's one of those few games that had a fresh creative vision behind it, impactful enough that it helped the video game industry as a whole evolve and realize you don't need to have the most realistic looking art style or best graphics in order to make an amazing or just a fun game. Innovation is like a double-edged sword. It can make or break a game, but it's all about how the creative vision is executed at the end of the day. It's all about how the bigger picture is executed at the end of the day. Nowadays, whenever someone complains about the state of AAA games, people will normally tell them, go play indie games, that's where everything is at. But the truth is, a lot of indie games actually suck. Usually they're just regurgitating old ideas that were played out back in the Game Boy Advance and PSP eras. There are a lot of indie games that pop up every now and again and blow up because they just do something different, but you can't find these games every single day. Look at a game like Hollow Knight. Sure, you can find a ton of Metroidvanias, but the thing that was so special about Hollow Knight to me was the aesthetic and art style of it. The first contact I ever had with that game was a picture I just saw randomly surfing the web. I saw the main character and instantly I was drawn in. I wanted to know what this was. I actually thought it was one of those games you could find on a free game website like miniclip.com, but even if that was the case, I was still eager to play this game. So I eventually went to the game shop, got a copy for my PS4, started playing it, and immediately I was hooked. That was when I first acknowledged that true diamonds, a true masterpiece, could come out of the indie scene. I know what I look for in games, so it's kind of hard for me to find indie games that just naturally pique my interest at first sight and tick all the boxes like Hollow Knight did. I like to find fresh experiences in games. I love being able to explore that new world that they have on offer, or experience amazing combat like that of the Devil May Cry series. So when an indie game fails to innovate or be unique in a significant way, it's gonna get swept under the rug real quick. Indie games can have high appeal to the new generations of gamers that probably were not around to experience games back in the N64, PS2 and Game Boy eras. they can also have high appeal to gamers that just love those types of games. Like, some gamers just don't want to move on from retro games, so maybe they prefer the style of indie games over AAA games. Sometimes gamers will also suggest trying out new genres, but no matter how open-minded you are, at the end of the day you can't force yourself to like something. You are who you are and you like what you like, although one's tastes and preferences can change over time. Sure, you can sit down and force yourself to play a game that you're not interested in, but you wouldn't be enjoying yourself at that point. If you know you only love games where you slay hordes of monsters, it doesn't really make much sense to be playing a game where all you do is milk cows and feed chickens. Maybe you could enjoy a game that has a mixture of those mechanics. Like, that's why a lot of games nowadays have a fishing mini game to help change things up a bit, but that's not really what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a perfect blend of 2 or more genres in a game, like Cult of the Lamb or a game like Dark Cloud, and there are a lot more examples I could use. As a modern day gamer, every time a AAA game releases, it's like you got a brace for impact when you buy it, because it's become the norm to experience a wave of bugs at launch that even the day one patch doesn't often completely fix. A lot of the time I wonder how the guys at the top sleep at night knowing that they're about to release a game that's either unplayable or just frustrating to play because of game breaking bugs. I mean, what happened to integrity? I know that most of these companies are only putting out games for a profit, and a lot of them are just straight up greedy. But when people go out to buy a new game with their hard-earned money and what they get is an unexpected bug infestation, you're losing the trust of the people. Most of us work long and hard to be able to buy these brand new games, but when I really think on it, the guy at the top can sleep like a baby at night because he knows he's gonna go on social media and apologize after he's already sold 3 million copies and recouped the investment. It's like their new business model is taking the modern gamer's money and then apologizing for the state of the game, as if an apology fixes anything. Everyone knows what happened with Cyberpunk and Battlefield 2042, and if you don't know how terrible the state of those games were at launch, you must be living under a rock. I genuinely feel sorry for those gamers who told me they spent $120 on the most premium edition for some of those games on launch day, only to be let down with a purchase they couldn't even get a refund for. But at least if that happened to you, you could take it as a learning experience that you should never get caught up in the hype of a new game. Nowadays, the gamers who buy games at launch are getting the least value for their money, since if they waited a few months they could have a better experience with less technical issues, and they'd definitely find it at a much more reasonable price. In order to protect gamers and stop them from getting scammed, a simple solution would be for more demos to be made available like the week before launch. Mandatory demos might actually be the cure for buggy releases, because developers know they'll miss out on a chunk of the profit if their game is unplayable or in a bad state. Companies like Sony and Microsoft are only a part of the problem and a part of the scam if they don't make demos compulsory or offer a try before you buy business strategy, or at the very least more consumer friendly return policies, especially if they plan on heading down an all digital future, which I personally am not a fan of. If you're anything like me, you probably hate it when games get announced 2 or more years before they actually release. I can understand from a business point of view why developers would do such a thing. I mean, they want content creators to hype up their game and promote it and build anticipation for it, and they want new developers and investors to support their project. But from the consumer's point of view, from my point of view, it sucks. It's like they're trying to give any gamer who's interested in their game the equivalent of blue balls. They show up at an E3 or any other game show to reveal a badass trailer when they know the game is still only in its pre-production phase. There must be some other way they can get support for their project behind the scenes without hyping it up to make it look like it's right around the corner, because I personally don't want to see or hear about it until it's at least 6 months to a year away, especially in this day and age where almost every game gets delayed, and 2 MIA games I can think of right off the bat at the time of recording are Silksong and Little Devil Inside. There's so many other games that just vanish for so long after they get announced. I think when a game gets shadow dropped or it shows up out of nowhere and gets released within 1 year of its announcement, it gets more appreciation from the gaming community at large, as long as it's a good game of course, because at least for me it's seen as a pleasant surprise, like a Christmas or birthday present you didn't expect. The influx of remakes has me believing that games are devolving instead of evolving. I recently made a video on AC Mirage in regards to this topic. With the huge amount of time and resources it's taken to make games nowadays, developers seem as if they are getting more and more reluctant to take risks and experiment with new ideas, so they've resorted to remaking and reselling old games that did well in the past, and that right there is making me question and ask if old games were really better, since they're being remade more and more it seems. Thinking about the future of games, I've been wondering if games have just hit a wall that they are struggling to get over. Like back when I was playing the original original MW2. I thought that COD games and most gun games would eventually have fully destructible environments by now. I feel like we will have that once AI and machine learning begin to play greater roles in game development. Although we're already beginning to see more of that in games like the finals. It's also going to take human creativity to bring some of those ideas to life in such a way that they make the game much more enjoyable. Speaking of creativity seems to be in short supply in the AAA space. Hopefully they can get more creative minds in the development side of things, and even when it comes to writing better stories, because I feel like a lot of recent AAA games have been filled with cliche and have become so predictable at times. I'm not 100% sure if we will see a major shift in the video game industry anytime soon, but for now I plan to cling to the games that I enjoy. Who really knows what the next mind-blowing game, the next cultural phenomenon is gonna be? It could be anything and it could drop anytime. It could come from Rockstar Games, maybe Nintendo. It could be one of these upcoming extraction shooters, an indie game, or maybe even a shadow dropped game that no one was really thinking about or expecting. But boy, I'm telling you, I sure can't wait to see what it's gonna be. Until next time, peace.